Good morning and welcome to another Monday morning edition of Improve Your Grade the 1% Way. These videos are specifically designed for anybody who's looking to pass their Part 3 or looking to increase their standards check grade based on the basis it cannot be all done in one go. Basically, the best way to do it is to make these little changes to your training each week, each day, 1% at a time, and eventually you will achieve your 51 out of 51 goal. My name is Dave Foster. I am fairly well known in the industry, been around for 22, 23 years now, etc. And if you want to know more about me, then look at my website, about me, etc. But I'm a holder of, one of the only holders of the Masters in Driver Training Education and many more qualifications. However, today what I want to do is, this is part 4 really in the series. I'm now building on what's the lesson plan adapted when appropriate to help the pupil work towards their learning goals. Another long sentence, long mouthful, but let's see if we can explain it. So was the plan adapted? It's probably one of the most common failures for Part 3 or the standards check that I see. Sitting in the back of lessons myself, it's one of the things I see. When I sit in the back, I'm just wishing the pupil, the instructor would change the plan. You can see a pupil is clearly struggling on one issue, and you know that in order to achieve what they want to do, they really need to work on the basis first, the basics of whatever's going on. Looking at many standard check failure report forms and check test forms going back then, I always remember even 15 years ago reading things on reports saying clearly there was a need for some good positive tuition. And I used to ask the examiner what do they meant by that. And basically we're saying, well, you've got a pupil who's been taught a subject, but they can't even use the clutch, or they can't even use the mirrors, or they can't ever use this. Yet the instructor is trying to teach them roundabouts or something, and you really need to adapt. So this is what it really means. You're going to change the plan. I've rarely seen a Part 3 or standards check as well where there was not a need to change the plan. I think because the way the Part 3 or standards check changes is the fact that the pupil is probably a little bit more nervous. They're presented with somebody else in the car. No matter what you tell them, there's still that bit of worry going on about who is this person, etc. So I think there's a bit of nerves there. So nerves come in. Typically the clutch goes to pieces, mirrors goes to pieces, even the MSBSR routing can go to pieces a little bit. And what I tend to see is that the instructor will just carry on with the plan regardless, normally giving some token gesture about, oh, we've spoke about that, or you've done that in the past. Clearly there is a need to change the plan. And my advice always to everybody is plan to change the lesson. When you're deciding whatever you're going to do for the lesson, and hopefully you've read my video on how to choose a lesson, but let's say your lesson is this week and you've decided to do meeting traffic, you need to think about what could go wrong, and if it goes wrong, when it goes wrong, what you would do. Planning and then being impulsive is one of the things that people have really picked up for I've said. So keep planning, thinking, what if this junction went wrong? What if this went wrong? What if this roundabout went wrong? And then think, what could I do? Where could I take the pupil to bring the tasker man down and change the plan and cover that, I remember many years ago an instructor who, for anybody who knows the Marsh Barton area in Exeter, and he took them to a roundabout. And the very first roundabout, the pupil messed up, and they were going to do a turn in the road for their for their standards check, and the pupil messed up the roundabout. But the instructor carried on with the lesson on the turn in the road, turning right at the first, left at the second roundabout, and left at the third, then out there. The examiner afterwards said, look, the pupil clearly needed some work on that roundabout. Why didn't you change the plan? And he said, there weren't any more roundabouts on my lesson. Whereas anybody who knows the area will know that instead of going left at the second roundabout, if they turned right, there was an absolute plethora of roundabouts that they could have gone in and out of and around, and they could have perhaps worked on the roundabouts for 2 or 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and come back round, and then carried on with the lesson. So plan to change. But I will cover this more when I cover the planning the routes lesson in this series. Let's have a look at why. Why do we need to change the plan? And I think if we can get that into ourselves, we can sort of see where we're coming from. I'm just giving you one example. Okay, there's many more examples, and every lesson is different. But let's take this one example. I want you to imagine you are covering a lesson on junctions with your pupil. Your pupil has now done approach, etc., etc., etc. They've done their moving off and stopping. They've done their routines, etc., and maybe even a bit of meat or anticipation. It doesn't matter. But during this lesson, you realise quite earlier on, your pupil is having some issues with the clutch. Now, what is it that the pupil really needs to achieve their goal? You would have covered the lesson on goals, so maybe you've set the goals that by the end of this lesson, we will be able to emerge from junctions safely and under control, etc. You would have let them know. But here they're obviously struggling with the control. So what do they need in order to achieve the aims of this lesson? Well, they're going to need to do some work on the clutch. So change the plan. Say to them something like, look, I can see you're having problems with the clutch. Would you like me to help you with this? Yes. How about we go and change this, go round the corner to that area, or take a quiet area, and let's rework out what's going on with the clutch. Maybe it's a road with a slight hill, etc. Okay. So you then go and change the plan, take them to an area a little bit quieter, and get the clutch sorted. Okay. Now, when the clutch is sorted, what you can then do is you can then come back onto the original lesson, and of course by having the clutch sorted you are working towards their goal of the junctions and merge, because it will be under control. As my slide says, have a mini lesson on the clutch, set the aims. By the end of this little lesson we'll be able to better use the clutch, and you'll be able to control the car better and smoothly. Okay, and we'll spend about 5-10 minutes on it. You know, set a time with them, as you would have heard in my previous lessons. So, incline's a good place. Don't take them somewhere and do a turn in the road to develop clutch control. Honestly, the last place anybody wants to develop a clutch control is in the middle of a road when they're doing a turn in the road. We all know what happens. It's a quiet road, everything's fine, the pupil's not stressed, and as you go to do the lesson, a bus turns up, a taxi turns up, a resident turns up, and the pressure's put on, you know. Sort the clutch completely and return to the lesson. Your pupil will be in a better place to achieve the emerging from junctions goal. Now I say this is just one lesson, okay, but it would be the true of anything. You know, if you notice you were doing junctions and maybe the MSPSL routine wasn't very good, then take them to a quiet area, get the MSPSL routine. If you notice the mirrors aren't good, just back it back a bit and do a 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes on mirrors and get the mirrors done. It is all part of the ultimate goal and plan for this lesson. Effectively, you're going back to the original lesson on clutch or mirrors or whatever. Some instructors do try to sort this on the move, but you need to change the plan, set the new manageable goal. Okay, don't try and do it on the move, it gets too busy. In theory, if you never achieved anything else on that lesson, but you did achieve working on the clutch, then learning has taken place, and that will work towards the pupil's goal. I can promise you, I've heard lots of examiners say if only they had gone and worked on that, if only that's all they achieved, then they would have been happy. Because if an examiner can see you achieve one thing, they know that the next week you would go back and achieve the other thing. They know you can. But if you spend a whole lesson where you don't achieve the junctions and merge because you never achieve the clutch control or whatever, then at the end of it, the examiner's thinking, well, you've not really achieved anything. The learner has not really learnt anything in this lesson. Sort the weakness. If you see a weakness, change the plan and fix it first. I've heard this said so many times. Why would you try to teach someone a junction or meeting traffic, crossings, or even a manoeuvre who cannot even use the clutch properly? And that can be applied to many other things. Think of a brick wall. I often use this analogy. If your foundation to the wall is not level, is not straight, how can you expect the middle and ultimately top levels to be straight? You need to make sure that the foundation bricks are firmly put in and each level is straight before you move on to the next. I've said it before, I've swished so many times, I know the examiners have, they sit in the back thinking, wishing the instructor change the plan, make it easy, simpler. So, your 1% challenge for this week and how you can increase your grade. Beginning of every lesson, think about what can go wrong, and when you see your pupil struggle with anything, stop now. Don't just keep plugging on with the lesson. Stop, explain, and change the goal. Have a mini lesson, 5 or 10 minutes on that, and then go back to the original one when they've achieved it. Agree the new goals, or when it's achieved, go back to the original. And just try that for each of your lessons this week, every time you see something go wrong. Okay, now as with each week, I normally put a little plug in about my products, etc. But I do this because I do believe these products can help you. In particularly useful for you guys is the 31 complete lesson planners that I do, or one of my lesson planners for lessons. They really do give a complete set of lesson plans for you to help build your lessons. I'll see you all next Monday. And on Friday, I'll do a quick catch up, asking how you're getting on, etc. It'd be nice to see some people reply, tell me how it's doing, etc., etc. It helps others. And if you've got any other questions, then ask me in the week. Thank you very much, then. I'll speak to you all soon. Goodbye.